Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Pastor's Study. You know, the writer in Proverbs chapter 30 is telling us of some wonderful things. And he starts out this section by saying there's three things, and then it's almost as if he pauses and says, no, there's four. Four things that he considers wonderful, too hard to describe and explain. And he says, the eagle in the sky. Imagine watching a bird like an eagle soaring through the air, never flapping its wings, just gliding along for hours on end sometimes. It's how the pilots began to understand the updrafts of wind. Those individuals that fly gliders, they learned how to do it successfully by watching birds like eagles who just glide around for hours on end, never needing to flap their wings. He says, the serpent on a rock. It doesn't have legs. How does it move? The marvel of how a snake moves along on a smooth surface like a rock. There's nothing to grip, there's nothing to gather, and yet a serpent can move on a rock. A ship in the middle of the sea. How does a ship move through the ocean? The wind, you don't see the wind, and yet it forces its way. The currents that are within the ocean itself can cause a ship to move along quite nicely at times. He talks about these things, and he says, the fourth thing, he says, the way of a man with a maid. Men can do some crazy things because of the love of a woman. Because he's attracted to a female, because he's attracted to a lady. It's hard to comprehend. And yet, he says, then he considers something else. He says, there's an adulterous woman. She does something, she eats, wipes her mouth, and then she acts as if there's nothing that she has done that's wrong. And it makes us ask the question, do we realize our sin? Or do we justify it? Do we say, well, this is who I am. This is the way life is. I can't change. You can't change who I am. Do we accept it? Or do we look for change? Do we look for God to bring change into our lives? Think about the wonderful things that God has done by sending His Son to die for our sins so that we could be forgiven and cleansed. Till next time in the Pastor's Study, goodbye, and may God bless.